All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Nurse Charms Live. I am your host, Nurse Charms. We got a great political debate tonight. You're going to enjoy this show. So make sure you share this video. Share this video. Invite all of your friends, all of your followers to watch our show tonight. I'm going to introduce my guest. I'm just going to get right into this. Tasha, my beautiful nurse friend, Tasha Young. Go ahead and introduce yourself. I always have my guests introduce themselves. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tasha Young. I'm a registered nurse. I'm here repping the ATL. I have almost 20 years of nursing experience. I worked in the insurance industry more recently. I'm also a life coach and women's empowerment and self-esteem coach and spiritual coach. And so be interested to learn more about how I got into the political arena as we debate.
All right. Nice. And DeMond Childers, go ahead and introduce yourself.
How you doing? Thanks for having me. My name is DeMond Childers. I also go by Max Truth. I am a local resident artist, music artist, but by profession, I'm a technology consultant. And I have past experience as a political organizer and a former candidate for Detroit Charter Commission. So as Tasha mentioned as well, I'll probably get more into that as we get on with the show.
All right, awesome. So we're just gonna dive right in. There's a lot to discuss. We're 60 days until the presidential election, November 3rd, and the first debate is coming up. Let me see. I posted on my page. It's coming up September 29th. I think it's in Cleveland, Ohio. I had to look on my page. What did I post? Yep, Cleveland, Ohio, September 29th. So that is going to be interesting. And we'll circle back to that in just 1 second. First, I want to talk about, what do you all make of all of the protests and violence, divisiveness, and hatred in our country? There's rhetoric that Trump is causing this, right? When you look at it, it's occurring in all of the Democratic ran cities, with Democratic governors and Democratic mayors. Chicago, Minneapolis, Portland, Kenosha. I mean, there's different states, or they're going around. There's this civil arrest going on. So when it comes to November 3rd, how is all of this gonna resonate with voters? So give me your take on this, on what's going on. How do you feel about all this stuff going on, and how do you in terms of like how all this going on and how it's being managed? Who will be a better candidate? So go ahead. We're gonna go first. Give me your viewpoint.
You want me to go first?
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I was gonna have Tasha go first, but 1 second, I want you guys back up for a quick second. I want you guys to tell the viewers where you sit on the political spectrum. So let everybody know. Tasha.
Okay. I sit on the conservative spectrum of the political arena.
Okay.
Myself, I consider myself an independent, though I am a former Democrat. I probably lean a bit conservative, but there are definitely some progressive leanings there as well. So I figure I'd say I'm probably representative of what you would consider a moderate.
Okay. All right. So who's going to go first to lead the discussion?
I'll ladies first.
Okay. All right. Come on. Y'all know everybody speak at once.
All right. So how do I feel about all the civil unrest? Well, to me, I feel like this is part of the typical leftist electoral strategy that tends to happen. And it's kind of come to a head in this country just because of where we are politically, where we are spiritually, and where we are with the paradigm shift. So I'm kind of, in a way, glad that it's happening because it's actually allowed Americans to see that they don't want America to go in that direction. We don't want an America where we're completely divided to a place we can't solve any problems. We're pointing fingers, we're blaming one party, spewing hate and propaganda. So it's kind of come to a head, and it looks good for Trump because actually Joe Biden, Trump called Joe Biden, he's lost a lot of Democrats in this time.
Okay.
Um,
So, you want to go ahead?
yeah. Well, I'll start by just kind of responding to your initial comment. I think I think there's it's a common saying that yeah, the Democratic cities and the Democratic governors have the most unrest. But I think if you peel back the layers a bit, what you'll really see is that the current issues that are affecting that are that the protests are sort of stemming from police brutality, which tends to affect inner cities, high black populations. These are inner cities, and you'll be hard pressed to find Republican mayors of inner city cities of predominantly black population. So that could be a bit skewed because there really isn't a Republican ran inner city that, to my knowledge, that really exists. So these these things all go hand in hand: local politics, state politics, to the national level. And I do feel like, as far as if Trump's responsible, if the governor's responsible, this is something that has been brewing for a long while. Since Public Enemy, NWA from the 90s, talking about police brutality, to Ferguson in 2015, things have come ahead. And I think, if anything, one thing that I do agree with is that Trump, I feel like, is sort of dog whistle or fan the flames for certain underground groups that tend to uh, ignite certain sentiments in these communities. So, it's a mixed bag, but that's my take on it.
Tasha, I've heard you talk about this like on your page, when you go live. Add some more depth to this discussion, because isn't that a problem? Well, I've heard you say this. That's a problem why all these Democrat run cities are run down. Like, I mean, is it normal? Can we just say that's I mean, DeMond, I feel like you're just giving an excuse. Well, that's how they are. Okay, well, isn't that an issue then? I mean, do we just let that slide? Well, that's just how it is, Like, how does that work?
So typically, this is what I've noticed, especially during this election, is a lot of people who kind of lean left, or they're kind of like apologists for the Democratic Party. And a lot of these
Right.
urban areas were Republican at one time. The Democrats took control of these urban areas, and they've been in control of these areas for at least 40 years. And so instead of people acknowledging the fact that Democrats have locally been running these urban cities at the mayor level, at the state level, even sometimes at the county level, and acknowledging that they have failed policies that impacted Blacks, they apologize for Democrats, and then everything gets shifted to the Republicans. And so this is a very interesting phenomenon that I'm seeing with this election, where it's clear that America is showing you in Chicago, St. Louis, LA, all these urban centers where the population is majority Black. You see poverty, you see broken families, you see people funneled to the child to prison pipeline. And those are failed Democratic policies. But I always hear the Democrats and the white liberals get a pass for that. And so it's very interesting that that's happening right now.
Yeah,
Um,
so DeMond, is that what you want to do? Give them a pass? Or
I don't want to give any of these politicians a pass. Quite frankly, I feel like we've all been duped. Um, Even terms like leftist, right wing, especially leftist. Uh, these are very nebulous terms. These are very mainstream nebulous terms. Um, a lot of these populations are voicing their frustrations in protest, their First Amendment rights. But it's, once again, this is a very layered thing. You got Detroit, that arguably has come out of a very intense financial struggle, dire financial situation from the last 10, 15 years. You have New York City, rising, Atlanta. A lot of these cities economically are doing much better than they were in the past. But these are long held systemic issues when you talk about urban populations and the school to prison pipeline that was mentioned before, these aren't, I don't believe personally, necessarily particularly liberal policies or conservative policies. What I feel like you find is the divisiveness that we see from between federal government and the state government, or the state government and the city government. Whereas a mayor comes into power and the opposite party doesn't want to work with that mayor for proper financing of their state. You have tax bases, poverty lines that aren't really extended beyond that. Like in Detroit, maybe somebody in the comments or could quote me, but I believe our poverty line, I can research that, but I believe our poverty line is somewhere around $38,000. You have a very limited tax base to do so much. So when you're in a cash strapped situation like that, which a lot of these inner cities are, you're dependent upon state funding. In our state alone, in the past, we've had state funding reneged by Republican legislatures that that were owed to us, frankly, that we never got. Mainly because a lot of times the opposing party wants to see these local leaders fail. A lot of that power dynamic is because I frankly believe a lot of Republican legislatures would love to bring their economic basis, their political basis into these cities. But let me riddle you this. Where have conservatives, let me say, take away conservatives, where has the Republican Party been as far as outreach into the Black community and to the urban areas in the past since the 1960s? It seems like after Lyndon Baines Johnson introduced the Civil Rights Act, they put their hands up. The parties kind of got switched around. The allegiance went to the Democrats. They lost that base fair and square. And not until Donald Trump, which I'll give him some credit, he has reached out to the Black community. He's pushing very hard in the Black community. And right now, it's up to us to sort of look through the weeds and discern what's best for us. And to be frank, though I don't agree with, some of my peers on some of the stances that Donald Trump, the pro stances that Donald Trump has taken, I actually celebrate the fact that we're thinking more independently and we're looking at things for what they are, and also not necessarily being loyal to either party, but holding these politicians' feet to the fire.
It's interesting. You brought up a few topics, and I just want to speak to that comment. There was a comment about Jim Crow. Jim Crow was a Democratic policy, for whoever put that down there. Jim Crow, segregation, red line, those are all Democratic policies. So I don't know where he got his information from.
Yeah,
that's first and foremost. So we're still going back to funneling the responsibility away from Democratic leadership. So the Democrats decided that they want to control the Black population in urban cities, basically. I want to walk everybody through how the Democratic plantation never left slavery, okay? So we have slavery in the South, which was not a government enterprise. It was a private enterprise owned by the Democratic aristocrats in the South. And let me walk you through. The Democratic Party was the party that owned slaves. So Reconstruction comes. Now, prior to Reconstruction, we had the Republican Party that was founded as the anti-slavery party. It was never a party built or founded on mistreating anybody. It was founded on Americans being free and having liberty and having a free market economy and having principles that honor the Constitution. Abraham Lincoln came on board. Slavery ended. The Democrats lost control, lost their economy in the South, okay? They blocked Reconstruction at a time where Black people had made significant gains in under 100 years. Ever since the Democrats never owned the slaves, their whole entire policies, their whole life has been to create policies that keep Black people enslaved. And so we go fast forward to the New Deal, where Black people ran towards Lyndon Baines Johnson. They abandoned the Republican Party because of pandering, because the Democrats wanted to control Black people again. Black people didn't get the New Deal. Fast forward to civil rights. That's another video where Black people didn't truly get civil rights. What they did was they left and abandoned their communities, they abandoned their economies, and they've been stuck on the Democratic Party like leeches ever since. This is why the Republican Party has not pandered, because right now you have a Republican who's actually doing what a Republican was created and founded to do, and you can't get Black people for 50 years to see that the Democratic Party has created zero policies that have improved their economic standing, their education standing, their family standing. Democrats' policies from the time we voted Democrat has never did anything to progress Black people or advance Black people. And if you can name a policy that helped us get beyond 1/2 of 1% of the nation's wealth since 1865, I stand to be corrected.
All right, I'd love to respond to that. So,
okay, go ahead.
So once again, there's a reason why I say we have to, especially if we're going to talk about Black people, but I think everybody, we have to liberate ourselves from this two-sided style thinking. Yes, the Democrats were in charge, quote unquote, at the time that, you had Jim Crow and segregation, things like that. Absolutely not. Let's not say that the Republican or the Democrats they were like a freedom party. And
they were.
Look, Abraham Lincoln owned slaves.
He freed the slaves too.
He was a
the Democrats fought to keep slavery.
But he literally owned slaves. So listen. Let me finish. Let me make these points.
He freed the slaves. The Democrats fought to keep them.
He did not have to do this.
Did he have the Emancipation Proclamation? Yes or no?
Frankly, Tasha, you made your points. Let me have my point. I'll let you speak.
But he ended chattel slavery. So he ended chattel slavery.
No, actually, he didn't end chattel slavery.
So are you still a chattel slave?
Listen.
Are you still a chattel slave?
Let me finish my point.
No. Are you still a chattel slave?
If you are going to let me speak, I'll let you speak for about 3 minutes.
But you gotta
I'm not going to respond to individual questions. I'm going to respond to the.
But you have to respond to truth.
Listen. In 1863, the proclamation, the Emancipation Proclamation came. There's a reason why we have Juneteenth, because slaves still weren't free. We had to send a federal agent in to enforce that. And that's why we have systemic issues.
No.
Let me give you a history lesson.
Hold on, Tasha. Let him go. Okay, go ahead.
Let me finish my points. It's just way too cut and dry to say that Abraham Lincoln, the man that owned slaves himself, magically wanted slaves free. We know it was not that cut and dry. We know that it was an economic issue to unite the South and the North. Slavery was one component of the Civil War. It was not about freeing the slaves only. Now, fast forward. As you go, my point is both parties have a racist context, because we know for a fact that in the Constitution, literally, that Black people were written in literally as
give me racist Republican policy. Give me racist
That's my point.
Give me racist
the 28th president, Woodrow Wilson, literally brought in the Ku Klux Klan. And he was out, and I'm giving you the facts, and I'm not going to take sides.
Republican policy.
At a Republican, I'm going to give you the facts.
He was a
Democrat.
Policies.
And I'm going to connect my point like this: the Ku Klux Klan, which he supported, literally came into the federal government when he brought in his federal people at a time briefly after the Civil War, after Reconstruction. We actually had a very prosperous, growing Black economic class growing in the United States. We had plenty of federal Black workers making great money in Washington, D.C. But once the Ku Klux Klan that were infiltrated into our government, once they came into those cabinet positions, they literally came in and said, oh no, they literally came in, removed Blacks from being allowed to take on federal positions. And that
policy.
Fast forward. my another overarching point.
God, this is going to be
Lyndon B. Johnson. You can roll your eyes to the fact.
policy. Give me policy.
I'm giving you policy.
No, you're not giving me policy.
I'm giving you facts and years.
Give me a racist Republican policy.
Okay, hold on. Listen, you guys can't all talk at once because it's just gonna all sound muffled. Listen, finish your point. I don't want to get too deep into history because we have a lot to talk about tonight. So finish your point, please.
I'll wrap it up in 20 seconds if I could just speak for 20 seconds, if that's cool. After the Civil Rights Act.
Go ahead.
Prior to the Civil Rights Act, yes, a lot of Black people were supportive of the Republican Party due to Abraham Lincoln freeing the slaves. But after the Civil Rights Act, a lot of that allegiance switched. We know that Martin Luther King Jr., for instance, he was a Republican as far as voting prior to the Civil Rights Act. That allegiance switched. My point is those same KKK infiltration that was in the Democratic Party during Woodrow Wilson, during Jim Crow, during segregationist time, they rejected the Lyndon Baines Party. If you don't believe me, think about this. Why is the state of Texas has been red since the 60s? Lyndon B. Johnson was a Democratic president representing the state of Texas. Once he passed legislation, it ain't been red since because they said, "Oh, damn, we can't support you anymore." A lot of those senators, they deflected to the Republican Party. That's what the Republican Party you have today. Please stop with this narrative that the same Republican Party of Lincoln is a Republican Party of 2020 because that is infactual and it's intellectual laziness, and we have to stop that narrative. It's just not true.
Okay, you're going to have to provide your historical receipts because everything you said is false. Okay, and I don't even want to go over history. I want to focus on policy.
No, you need to understand history to understand the concept.
You're spewing revisionist history. I don't need the
I'm giving you facts. I gave you everything you need.
Okay, we're talking about two political parties, and we're talking about Black people, and we're talking about civil unrest, civil rights, social justice. Mm-hmm. So I would like for you to tell me where since the civil rights era, have Republicans passed it or voted in majority any legislation, any executive orders that have caused as much damage in the Black communities?
The reason they have not supported any of the progressive legislation that have allowed Blacks to go beyond affirmative action. Frankly, we haven't got that from either party since the 1960s. Is my point. We haven't got that at all. After we got the 1964 Civil Rights Act, we've been out here willy-nilly and we've acted like Jim Crow didn't exist. We acted like none of these policies systemically in our country didn't exist. So again, to my point, you can go with the left, right, all you want. I'm going to keep telling you that we've been duped on both sides. And the fact is, we have not had Republican legislation that has done much for us at all. As far as Democrats, what we have had is a double down on remixes, basically, of civil rights legislation, decade after decade after decade. I think that's why you also saw in the Democratic primary a splintering of the Democratic Party, where a lot of further leftist people supported Bernie Sanders. People upset with Biden for his past support of the crime bill. This isn't some pro-democratic diatribe I'm telling you, but I'm also telling you Republicans ain't done shit either.
So Republicans' tax policy doesn't benefit Black people. Republican tax policies in the past 4 years. There's the Republican tax policies while we have more growth in jobs.
You talking about the tax parties that double down on tax on lowering taxes for the top 1%? You talking about those policies?
Trump policies did not do that. His tax policies targeted the middle class by giving corporations the tax deductions from 39% to 21%, which created more job growth and economic growth, and Black people benefited from that. So you're telling me a Republican tax policy has not benefited Black people in the past 4 years?
Okay, ever since the 1980s, Republican, we call it Reaganomics, we call it trickle-down economics. We always say that cutting taxes for the wealthy somehow magically create jobs. Our wages have been stagnant since the 1980s. So
The IRS just
you can
reported
get all
because
the $9, $10 hour jobs you want. That is not helping blacks, brown, or white people at all. So his tax policies, hell, you
they
got
lowered the black unemployment rate
he's
in
now worth
historic levels.
$200 billion. Tell
It
me,
lowered black unemployment rates in historic levels in the past 50 years. So, and the IRS.
yeah,
So you're saying that creating jobs isn't helping black people? What are you saying here? I'm trying to figure out, because you're saying these $9 and jobs isn't helping anybody, and that's false.
No,
so let's speak that now.
That's absolutely true. If we're gonna have somebody making $9-10 an hour at Walmart working 40-50 hours and they still need welfare to support their families, that is a subsidy given to the corporation.
What?
So yes, I mean, does that not make sense?
What framework are you working from? We're talking about employing people.
What do you think I'm talking about? If I give you a $9 here, let me do the math for you. Follow me, Tasha. Follow me.
So you want the population to be unemployed?
I'll make the math easy. $10 an hour. I'll give you 50 hours a week. We won't even make it 40 hours a week. How about that? $500 a week, $2,000 a month.
Okay.
We haven't even got to the taxes. Tell me, how can you support that's one person. We haven't even got to, if you got children, you will need welfare to support your family with that. So my point is, you can give taxes, tax breaks to corporations all you want, but if they aren't even paying wages that can provide a livable wage for people, it's a subsidy to the corporation, because all that does is create profit windfalls to the top. You could create a $9-10 an hour job, but it's a smoke screen. It's a smoke screen policy that tells you that you have benefited, but that does not advance the middle class.
No, his tax cuts created economic growth. And not only did it do that, the people who got jobs got higher wage jobs. And they got women off the welfare rolls. A lot of black women got off welfare and higher paying jobs. I don't know where you're getting your data.
Where are you getting your data?
IRS.
Yeah.
How about this? A lot of the wage growth from black women actually has come from the fact that black women are the fastest growing population of entrepreneurs. So you got to credit black women for pulling themselves by their bootstraps to take advantage of tax breaks and things like that to advance themselves. But that didn't come from jobs. But you also have to actually credit the Democrats for their civil rights, equality, and progressive policies that have allowed women to gain the education they've been able to gain, to equal the playing field in a patriarchal society, to advance themselves in society. Those aren't Republican policies. Those are Democratic policies that have allowed that have allowed women to advance in the last 30, 40 years.
Based on what data point are you using?
Okay, you've talked for about 20 minutes. I haven't saw you bring up a policy.
Go onto the IRS. You can go onto the White House website. They have reports where they have measured in the 3 years. It didn't reach his 3% growth that he wanted, but it created a significant growth and it lowered black unemployment levels to the lowest levels in history. That was a Republican policy.
Listen,
that was a Democratic policy.
Tell me when did
let me go over to the
going down? Did it start going down during Trump or during Obama?
I didn't hear your question.
Let me come over here to the
I got to respond to that. Tell me when the unemployment rate started going down. Did it start going down under President Trump or under President Obama?
It went down to historic lows under Trump because of his tax cut bill, and because of his policies and executive orders. They had an immediate impact over the last 3 years.
Donald Trump came into the presidency in a strong economy. Our stock market was at historic highs.
He created that with his policies.
Now we can credit.
He didn't come into a strong economy. He created policies.
Now we
He
now
made trade policy changes. He made tax policy changes. He created executive orders that impacted economic growth. That impacted Wall Street.
the
Obama don't get
rate
credit for
was
that.
only a
He
6%
brought
rate.
manufacturing jobs when Obama said it couldn't happen. So in 2017, he started bringing companies back to America. You don't give Democrats and Obama credit for that, boo. They don't get that credit.
Tell me what manufacturing jobs are you talking about? You're talking about the ones in Indiana and Pence's, Indiana. What manufacturing jobs?
Still, he's written executive orders on a lot of different manufacturing jobs.
Still,
Samsung's about to
look
come
at the
back.
stock on
Drug
steel right now. It's
manufacturing.
at all-time low.
He's brought back
Stock
some
on steel
companies
is
to the
dead.
USA. So that created growth. And he gave them tax breaks. Obama didn't do that.
Actually, Obama did
Yeah,
extend
a
the
lot of
tax
jobs
rate.
went over.
Obama did extend the Bush
A lot
tax
of jobs were.
rate, actually.
That's not he didn't use Bush tax cuts.
He extended the Bush
Trump
tax
came in
cut.
and created a different tax policy that no other president has ever created. His jobs and tax cuts
He
bill.
did the exact same policy Bush did in 2004.
No, it's not the exact same policy.
Okay.
It's not the exact same
Okay,
policy.
okay. Listen, y'all. We're gonna move on. We're gonna move on from that. But I do want to ask both of you all, what candidate need to do in order to win? Violence and COVID, those are some of the top issues, the president should be focusing on right now. But what do you think, what should be their strategy? What do they need to do to get out to the polls? I saw a Gallup poll, and it had actually it had like I think it was like 40% independent and like 28% Republican and 2% Democrat. So we got a huge percentage of people who are independent. So those independents, they have to vote for either or they may vote, Green Party candidates and stuff like that. But what do the presidents need to do to pull those independent voters towards towards themselves? So what should be their strategy? What should they be focusing on? Should they be focusing on the black vote? Should they be focusing on, Trump is about law and order, trying to put an end to all of these protests, trying to, let's see, Biden is pushing unity. Whoever wants to go first, what are your suggestions?
Well, I'll just say right now, the unemployment rate is hovering around, I mean, the real unemployment rate, you probably, the unemployment rate probably says it's around 10, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, 13%, but the actual unemployment rate due to layoffs, to be fair, layoffs, some of these people might go back to work, it's probably hovering around 50% in some states. So I think, as far as the tension and civil unrest and racism, to me, the great equalizer will always be economics. That whoever comes with the best economic policy for not just black people, but Americans all around, I think has the best chance to win. And just to add one more caveat to that, I kind of see the civil unrest as a twofold thing. I see police brutality as a symptom and sometimes a scapegoat for the actual issues. If people were really doing well and thriving in our society, I think they would have less angst. And I think it goes back to my point. A job just isn't enough. We need stronger wages, and we need to bring, we could say bring back manufacturing. I personally am not very optimistic on that sort of type of policy, but economy is usually the number one policy that gets presidents elected, and I don't think it'll be too much different this time around.
Yeah, I think
Tasha?
Trump needs to continue to do what he's doing, but focus on all Americans, focus on economic growth, focus on keeping immigration under wraps. I mean, he has hit all of the main points that I feel like as an American, it's important for me. The economy, taxes, healthcare. I work in healthcare. So he has been killing it when he came into office. He's lowered drug costs. He has tackled the opioid addiction issues and FDA licenses and prescriptions. So he's doing a lot of good things on the healthcare front. He did the executive orders to make insulin more affordable. So from the healthcare standpoint, He is really killing the game. Joe Biden hasn't even addressed health care. He wants to keep Obamacare, which is an epic fail. I think Trump continue to do what he's doing because he actually got a 50% increase in the black approval rating. There's no way numerically the Democrats would be able to secure this vote because they have to have 9 out of 10 black votes. Hillary Clinton, with all of the black people rushing in fear, trying to vote President Trump out, they voted him in because, see, the Democrats don't teach black people about the Constitution in the Electoral College. And this is really crazy because these people are in office to uphold the Constitution, but they teach black people vote Trump out. And you can't do that because the process, our founding fathers tried to avoid this very thing. Our founding fathers
Yes,
created the
I'm
electoral.
glad you brought this up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
the
want
electoral
to
college was
talk about.
created. It was created so that we won't have these kind of politics going on now. See, our forefathers were very forward thinking, and they knew that we'll have a moment where people will be trying to vote people out or be voted on popularity and not on who's going to uphold law and order. So they created the electoral college. So on election day, you're voting for your state electors. The 538 electors are going to vote for Donald Trump in December. I'm claiming that because the Democratic Party has failed, and there's not going to be 9 out of 10 black votes. It's not going to be enough independent votes. It's just not going to numerically happen unless they cheat.
Well,
Um. Yeah, yeah. Wait, let me say something, right? Because that's what I continuously keep hearing. If you don't vote, that's a vote for Trump. Uh, explain that and explain that, Demond. Why do people keep on saying that if you don't vote, it's a vote for Trump? If you don't vote, it's just you don't vote. We saw in 2016 that Trump did not win the popular vote. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. So why do people continue to say that rhetoric over and over? If you don't vote, it's a vote for Trump. And just like Tasha said, we got to vote him out. And we're worried about everything else later. Let's just vote him out and just, hope that the Democrats are gonna do something for us once we get them in office. So speak about that a little bit.
yeah, well, there was one thing I do agree with Tasha on, is that for Democratic Party to win, for Biden to win, he's going to need a significant amount of black voters. And I think that Trump probably has the best chance to siphon off black voters that I've seen in a very long time. And there's also still the X factor of, disgruntled Bernie supporters out there who may not vote for Biden. At the end of the day, though, it's going to boil down to enthusiasm and get out the vote, basic on the ground political organizing, and who's more excited about their candidate and the issues that concern them, and who shows up to the polls. Now, there's a lot to say about absentee ballots and corruption. It's just a hot mess. Honestly, I feel like our county and state and local, secretaries have to be very vigilant in making sure that the elections are ethical and done right to make sure the votes are counted. But as far as did I directly address your point? I feel like it was something else that
Yeah, I was wanting you to give your take on people saying that if you don't vote,
oh,
it's a vote for Trump.
right. Well, I think if you're a
Explain
Democrat,
how that does not make sense. That doesn't logically make sense. It doesn't mathematically make sense. People continuously say that, and they continuously think that. I don't know where they're getting that from. And every time I try to correct somebody, it just goes into a huge argument. It's like, oh, you must be voting for Trump then. Just respect people, whoever they're voting for. You know what I'm saying? But dang, like, they just go so hard. Like, oh, a no vote is a vote for Trump. Like, y'all need to chill. Like, where are y'all even getting this crazy foolishness from?
well,
So you want to explain
yeah.
that?
Well,
The
I mean,
Democrats.
obviously, if you're a Democrat and you want your candidate to win, that's the argument you're going to make, right? But at the end of the day, we live in a free country. We have independent voices, and if you have a third party candidate you want to support, hey, I don't see why you can't support your candidate. But mathematically, if you just divide it down the line, once again, if it comes about, if it boils down to voting for your electors for that state, you want as many votes as possible. So whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you can make that same argument for both sides. A non-vote for Trump, for independent party, that a person that would normally lean conservative is a vote for Biden. You can make that point. But I personally don't prefer to pigeonhole that point, because I feel like
Right.
it's not strong enough in an election where there isn't a clear third party candidate. Now, if we had a very clear third party candidate, maybe that will make a little bit more mathematical sense. But at the end of the day, it's going to boil down to enthusiasm and voter turnout. So whether you're on the left or right side of the spectrum and you're enthused about your candidate, you need to make sure people get to the polls, vote, and show up on election day.
Okay, and one more thing I want to address. What should the Democrats be doing? Because right now, like, they're pushing this whole Trump is racist, and that is not enough to make people vote for Biden. Like, it's like they need a new pitch, or it's like they need a new marketing campaign. Like, Trump, his thing is law and order, and he's talking about religion and God and like that. But the Democratic Party, it's just like, oh, he's racist, and people are so far above that. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not gonna make you just automatically vote. You got a lot of black disengaged Democrat voters. You know what I'm saying? So these people are just not going to vote, because you got a lot of them saying, well, I either one. You know what I'm saying? And if you want to, and if the Democrats want to actually pull those people back to their party, they got to do something more than just say Trump is racist. So what would be your strategy with that?
Well, the Democrats have always used fear and identity politics to get blacks. I don't think they know any other way to get the black vote. Since the civil rights era, you see, you had dogs biting, sicked on black people. So their whole strategy has been, let's identify different groups and make them victims. And then we're going to say, because you're a victim, we're going to create this federal tax paying program to right the wrongs, and it end up making everything worse. And this has been their electoral strategy since we have flocked to them, giving them blindly 9 out of 10 votes for the past 50 years. They literally, there's nothing else that they can do. They have used this for 50 years for every election. Let's scare black people. Let's teach the black victims that the Republicans, white conservatives, are the reason why they're oppressed. Let's give them this revisionist history that they're the racist party. Instead of saying we're the racist party, we have created every policy possible to set you back. And we'll tell you in your face that we're helping you. So this has been the electoral strategy for 50 years. And it surprises me that black people are still debating with me about this, when all you got to do is go to Chicago, go to Atlanta, go to any locality where there's a mayor who's a Democrat, and look at the conditions of black people, and not realize that even the black Democrats have failed black people. So that has to be racist. When you teach people that you're a victim, you're inferior, you're not good enough. We got to lower the bar. We got to create programs to keep you victimized. We teach you not to be responsible. We teach you that everything that happens to you in this country is not for circumstances, not for your bad choices or maybe your decisions, but white conservative people are the reason why you're oppressed. That's their election strategy. They don't have any more.
Well, I think
DeMond?
Well, I think if you want to talk about true conservative principles, no political leader is going to tell me about responsibility and teach me these things. It seems, Tasha, that you make a lot of points about the Democratic Party teaching this and teaching that. I've never had a politician sit up in front of a chalkboard and teach me too much of anything, left or right. I think that's the responsibility of parents. I think that's the responsibility of your environment. A lot of us are a product of our environment. So a lot of our, it's like I said, it's a mixed bag. Whether, it sounds like I'm being cliche or not, it's a mixed bag. A lot of policies that have allowed blacks to advance themselves in part have been because of progressive policies as far as education and advancement, things like that. But then there's another side, right? When you become an entrepreneur, you might be able to get some of those tax breaks that favor that Republican policies have put in place. I think if we're going to talk about bring it back to black economics, that's where I feel like black people can win if we can start discerning and sort of traveling the nuance of policy to see what benefits of us best. Because not every black person is an entrepreneur. Not every black person is going to be the CEO of a company. Some people just want to work. Some people just want to come, make a few dollars and support their families. And that isn't always going to be a pro-conservative policy that sort of backs their lifestyle. So I'm beating a dead horse if I bring up. I already brought up the point again. Once again, that we keep saying that Democratic-led cities, but once again, these are generational economic issues, and I don't think
caused by Democrats.
that any mayor that you implant into a city
Implant.
or
Okay, no responsibility
can necessarily solve the issues of systemic racism and economic oppression that goes far back to Reconstruction. That is why, you have to go a little deeper, a little bit more layered if we are serious about addressing those issues. But I haven't seen from either party really tackle those things. Not until the year 2020 have I even heard the word systemic. It was till 2020 where I heard the word systemic brought up in a public forum. And actually, that's pretty amazing because you would think that word is too big for these politicians, systemic, and it like makes people's heads swivel. But there's a conversation to be had about things that have sort of traveled along a rope back to Reconstruction. That's probably a conversation for another day. But as far as a local mayor, the best you can do is attract top talent to your city, limit crime, and produce a valuable education so that the citizens can come up out and rise up out of poverty and advance themselves into the job market, into the economic marketplace as far as business ownership and self-empowerment, so that when they have children, as I started my point, they can teach those values to their kids. But if we're going to sit back and wait for a politician to teach us history and civics and all these things, we already lost. There's nothing to really talk about. I don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat. We can't wait for them to teach us anything. The cavalry just ain't going to come for us.
That's what not politics is not about that. Politics is about people voting their values. See, black people don't vote their values. You vote liberal values when you're really a conservative at your core. And that's why you get screwed as a black person voting the Democratic Party, because you don't believe in late term abortions. You don't believe that the taxpayer should pay for an abortion. You don't believe that the government should be monitoring your every move and taking your freedoms and liberties away. You don't believe in mandatory vaccinations. So why would you vote a party who goes against your values? So we at the place right now, it's not about left or right, like you said, but it's about looking at your values. And if you got a leader in the office, is his policies aligned with your values? Black people do not vote their values like they're supposed to. That's the problem. You keep voting out of fear and listening to Hollywood. You keep listening to these people shucking and jiving on stage, listening to Cardi B. Y'all listen to all these Hollywood people who are owned by the Democrats. And they're going to tell you, like Michelle Obama, you were $40 million. You live in Martha's Vineyard and you're preaching oppression to people. You're perpetuating victimhood to people instead of teaching them to be personally responsible for their actions. Instead of teaching them to, let's look at how we can build a family and be responsible. You, a multimillionaire, you got federal security for life. Your kids are set for life, but you're perpetuating as a leftist the victimhood consciousness that make black people not responsible and voting along their values. They push fear in black people. We need to vote our values. Vote your values.
Yes. Yeah. My father comes from poverty. His parents were sharecroppers and their parents were actually slaves. So like, and my dad, he totally just left his family and just started a new family, like with no money. So like, you know, his stories, like I know it can be done. So like I was never trained for that victim mindset. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like it was just like, oh no, like I started my first job when I was 14. I was spoiled, I will admit, but the one time my parents told me no, I went and got my own job, you know, because they always, you know, taught and instilled me to be independent. And so from that point on, I've literally worked every day of my life since the age of 14 years old. So, you know, when I just hear all these people, you know, stuck in a victim, like there's been times I worked 2 and 3 jobs, you know what I'm saying? And like somebody was in here on the and you know, DeMond, you were talking about, well, that's not enough money. What you do, you go get a second or a third job if you have to. You know what I'm saying? Like you just have to figure it out. And you know, instead of the government spending, you know, money on keeping and aid, you know, food stamps, all this stuff, that money could be used to help us get a better education. So or you know, put us into some type of trade or skill program, so you know we can start our own business, so we understand credit, you know, so many other ways that we could be, that the government can be helping us to build ourselves up versus keeping, you know, us down and just dependent. And so that's one of the issues we always had. Like I feel like we should get out there and do it ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a free country. There's resources available, and I'm sure people probably looking at me like I'm crazy. Like,
No.
oh yeah, that's easy for you to say it. Well, how is it easy for me to just say it? My dad did totally the thing I'm talking about. You know, there's tons of people out here. You know, they had nothing and now they're rich, or you know, now they're successful. So I know it can be done. So I
And
mean,
also in Jim Crow era,
I don't know what else to say.
during Jim Crow, Black people took significant strides in Jim Crow, built their own communities, even under Black code. Black people had their own hospitals. They were producers. They had their own transportation. So when I hear Black people now talking about victims, it makes me sick, because even those Black people back then, when the lynchings were highest, they never were anti-American, and they never said they were victims of anything. They got out there and worked. They created their boots. So they made bootstraps. And they didn't beg the government for anything. So when I hear Black people today, post Jim Crow, talk about oppression, I'm not trying to hear it. I'm not trying to hear it. Because our ancestors never complained about that. Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, nobody ever complained about that.
There's a lot of it's a lot of fuzziness. And it's
here's a victim mindset.
Do what you got to do.
Here's the victim mindset right here. There are people who made up who lost their to deliver pizza.
Do what you got to do.
Let me just touch on.
That's victim. They too good. Once you had this 100K job, you lose your job. Now you too good to do whatever else. So I mean, whose fault is that?
Let me just touch on something. It sounds like you ladies are trying to make the victim mindset and poverty somehow a democratic thing. The reality is let me make my point. There are plenty of Democrats who make 2-3 jobs. I've been there myself, having worked 3 jobs at a time to make ends meet. But I think the issue is, in a lot of progressive politics that I actually agree with, is where's the equity when you give corporate welfare of no taxes and you tax somebody making hardly anything and to get ahead. Tasha, you cut me off a lot. To get ahead so they can save and invest. Secondly, look at rural America, white rural conservative America, who overwhelmingly supports Republicans. Appalachia, the Bible Belt, West Virginia. Listen, they are absolutely poor.
But they don't cry victim. They don't cry, oh, woe is us. Woe is us.
Listen, what your point about who's crying victim or not, that's from your perspective. But what I see is people are voting against their own interests.
No,
there are poor people on both sides of the spectrum. Democrats don't have some kind of monopoly on poverty.
Yes, they do, because they created poverty for Black people.
A great deal of the Republican base is poor.
They're not victims.
That's the reality.
They own their own weapons. They grow their own food. They pay their houses off, even if they're shacks. They do what they gotta do.
Tasha, it sounds like you have some kind of vendetta against Black people who are poor.
You're taking up for the victims. I'm telling you, you got poor people who are not
the victims.
Poor people who are not.
I just told you, people who are working 40, 50 hours. What I am a proponent for is, if you're going to put them on welfare for 50, 60 hours a week working, let Walmart, let Amazon pay their share so that we can have a more equitable society.
And they pay their share by getting a lower tax bracket. You help the 1%. They employ 80% of the Americans. You got to give these people a tax break so they can pay more. That's what's happened under Trump. The Democratic policy,
minimum wage jobs,
class people poor with their tax policy.
America isn't going anywhere fast with $8, $9, $10 hour jobs that we've had. The same 8, 9, 10 hour jobs.
Manufacturing high-skilled jobs back.
And if we're going to move
high-skilled jobs back, he's not bringing back low-skilled jobs.
If we're going to move beyond the 2020, we got to understand that we're moving beyond the industrial age. We're moving beyond manufacturing jobs.
Tell your fellow victims that.
I have right now. I'm a technology. I'm a
whatever job they can get.
I'm a technology consultant by trade, and I'm gonna tell you right now, those policies that you're talking about, you're gonna see a lot of those poor white conservatives really looking at the Republican Party real strange in the next 20 years, because there are a lot of truckers who are on the road right now who don't realize that automation is coming, and they aren't going to need those truck drivers. Manufacturing jobs, Donald Trump is still selling dreams to coal miners out in West Virginia. We know damn well we aren't looking at coal energy for the next 50 years. So when are we going to have an honest conversation and stop doing things? Look, hey, we're giving coal miners, we're trying to create coal mining jobs, and we don't even have a clear understanding of what healthcare looks like in this country.
If you're a victim, you don't understand anything, but I can't.
Are literally sick and dying on top of COVID.
Victim, you can't teach victims about digital age, because they're going to always feel like, I'm left behind, nothing is good enough. Yes, we're moving into a digital age. You can't be a victim in the digital age, or you will be behind.
Tasha, my point is, whether you're a self-described victim or not, that does not mean that you aren't being left behind in the economy. So if I'm a poor white conservative in Appalachia,
you'll be left behind,
and I'm pulling myself by my bootstrap, but I'm a 4th generation coal miner who's struggling to feed my family and going to soup kitchens, at what point am I going to hold my elected officials accountable and say, hey, this just ain't right?
We're leaving the Industrial Revolution. Okay, that's what you're talking about. We're moving out of the Industrial Revolution and we're moving into a digital age, which means people who've been comfortable with these low skill, long jobs are going to have to retrain. This is not a political party issue. If you are a victim and you're used to being dependent on Democrats, you're going to be left so far behind that it's ridiculous. Instead of focusing on oppression, you need to be focusing on innovation. So if you're a victim, you're going to have to rise up as a Democrat. If y'all going to be voting Biden, he's not addressing that. The White House has on their website, Trump has put a lot of research and development money, billions, hundreds of billions, into AI, quantum technology. And if you're a victim, you need to be reading that instead of marching and protesting, tearing down statues. You need to be retraining for the new digital age.
I think you can walk and sip your water at the same time.
You're going to get left right behind and get ran over by an auto-driving car.
You can fight for your First Amendment right, and everybody has that right. And I will never trample on your
Let's see how that works out.
Okay, yeah. Okay, listen. Let's change gears. I want to ask you all about Biden, because there's been a lot of criticism about him not coming out and doing any press. And and he's agreed to do these 3 debates. And then Nancy made comments saying that she wouldn't even dignify Trump if she was Biden. She feels like they should be on 2 separate stages. So yeah, do you think that they're not coming out and meeting with constituents and just talking to people and campaigning, can he win an election from his basement? What are your thoughts on that? Does he need to be more out visible, actually campaigning? And he actually said that in an interview. He said that he would follow the science. He said he would campaign from his basement, follow the science in terms of COVID.
And
So what are your thoughts on that?
This is crazy. I can't believe we're talking about this.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a very tough position to be in during COVID right now. I understand, I get it. I understand Biden wants to follow the science, and I think he's showing leadership by not trying to contradict what he's expressed as is the science in the campaign. But I will say it will make it extremely difficult for him. This is a very unorthodox election where we're not shaking hands and kissing babies.
That's what Hillary did.
What did Hillary?
But Hillary did the same thing, and you see what happened. She didn't campaign. She didn't want to go out and campaign. She did the. Biden is literally following Hillary Clinton's book, literally play for play. He's doing the exact same thing, and that's what I'm asking. Like, isn't this going to cost him his election?
I think it's definitely going to hurt.
Should he be getting out more?
No, because Black people don't expect Democrats to work for their votes. You don't have to court Black people for you. You can hide in the basement all year, and as long as you pushing fear and long as you promising them stuff, even though you got a 50-year track record of failure, as long as you keep one racial slip up after the next, one racist policy after the next, you can do whatever you want as a Democratic presidential candidate, because Black people have blindly voted for the party without having to court. They don't have to. Obama spent 8 years in office and ain't doing a damn thing for Black people. And he told Black people, look, I'm here to help all Americans. End up just helping gay people and the illegals. So for the Democrats, this is what they're used to. They're used to Black people being stupid enough and unevolved enough to not stand up and say, your promises have not been kept. Like Trump, every promise he made in 4 years were only 4 years experience versus all this hundreds of years experience in them in office. They don't have to do nothing for Black people. And this shows what's sad of a place we're in right now, where Joe Biden can hide in the basement, don't even go to the Black areas to see what's going on, don't address Black people out in the streets. He can sit there, talk to Charlemagne the God, Hollywood, again, Cardi B, who don't represent the average Black woman. She's rich, right? Talk to Hollywood, talk to the elite Hollywood who are buddies with them, and Black people will still run to the polls 8 out of 10 and still give Trump the ticket.
But Kim Kardashian, Kanye West, Jim Brown does represent Black people. That's a
he only got 8% of the Black vote. He didn't need the Black vote to win. He don't need the Black vote to win this time.
But you still have 2 candidates courting celebrities to try to paint.
No, they're courting him. Kim, she's an opportunist. She was courting Trump to better herself. Trump didn't need him. And no Republican is going to vote another Republican because of Hollywood. Republicans vote on values. They don't care about no Kim Kardashian. You think Kim Kardashian affected the Republican vote? We're not stupid.
I saw the RNC. Trump has a 4-year history of bringing in all kinds of YouTube stars and Insta famous folk to sort of represent the Black vote, to try to trump that up. No pun intended. But you spoke on something. A second ago. Man, the reality is it's a lot of pandering going on right now. It seems that the Black vote is up for grabs right now. and for good measure. That's why I'm not going to be big on saying what black people do and don't do. There's a reason Trump was elected, and I think it was a big part of the reason was because he siphoned off a little bit more of that black vote than historically has been done, and he sees an opportunity there to do it again. But one thing I wanted to add is I completely disagree about Trump's accomplishments this term. It's like I see a huge smoke screen. I watched the GOP. I watched GOP supporters time and time again talk about how President Obama was overstepping his boundaries as president because he was doing executive orders. All Trump has done is executive orders. Yes, he has passed a criminal reform bill that frankly only affects federal prisons, but I'll give him that. And a tax policy that was not needed, frankly. It has extended. It has extended. The stock market has extended tax rates for corporations. But as far as a lot of policies like the wall, he did not repeal Obamacare like he said he would, which I actually support Obamacare. Though
black people didn't benefit from it.
But he has not passed zero significant legislation during these 4 years. Complete smokescreen, all talk, all trumping up politics, and you're going to be in a rude awakening if you expect that wall to be built even in the next 4 years. If you expect Obamacare to be repealed ever, it's not happening. At best, Trump will be another 4 years, and he will have now become the status quo of American politics. Because guess what? He's still telling you he's going to bring back manufacturing and coal mining jobs. And unfortunately, 4 more years of Trump will probably be more protesting in the streets, more $9, $8, $10 hour jobs, more smoke screen, more of the same.
Based on what information?
Based on the reality. You tell me a policy that Trump has passed is not an executive order. Outside of
his executive orders are policies
and the tax bill.
Executive orders are executive policies.
No, executive orders can be
they're implemented immediately.
President Biden could come in and reverse all those executive orders on day one.
But he wrote almost 300 executive orders, probably at 300 now. They have been implemented.
And a lot of them are also in the Supreme Court right now being debated if they're even legal.
No, they're very legal. He's always operated with.
They're all being carried out.
Right.
They've already been carried out. These ones that he did recently for COVID, those are already being carried out.
Yeah.
The unemployment,
they have not been passed by Congress, so they don't have any real teeth in our federal government right now. If another president comes in and wants to
that's because Congress is too busy trying to spy and create impeachment hoaxes and all kind of things to overthrow him. So the Democrats have not worked for the American people for 4 years. They spend all their time trying to get him out of office. So he's had to write executive orders because they're operating incorrectly. They're not operating in the best interest of America. They're operating in their best interest to win the presidency. So for 4 years, he's had to write executive orders. He's passed a few bills, but he's had to write executive orders because Nancy and Pelosi and them trying to overthrow him. They're not trying to worry about lowering taxes for Americans, address healthcare needs for America. They're not voting. They didn't even want to spend time in Capitol Hill. He's a real leader.
Nancy Pelosi doesn't even want to come back to Congress. So Nancy Pelosi doesn't even want to come back to Congress, so they can at least pass this $105 billion that has already been agreed upon by both the House and the Senate. There are line items that the Senate and the House have agreed on. But Nancy Pelosi, unless it will agree to pass this $3 trillion that she wants to give all of these most democratic states to help bail them out. And that's basically a no-go. They're not agreeing to that. So the Senate, they're going to write another bill and they're going to propose that. But this is just such a shame. I mean, yesterday, there's video circulating. We see her getting her hair done. She's got her hair all colored and beautiful now, but it's like, okay, you got time to do all of things, but what about the American people who are suffering? What about the small business owners? What about these stimulus checks that could have been gone out? What about the unemployment that she's holding up? It's totally unfair. It's totally hypocritical, and I don't know why people just keep blowing that over like it's no big deal. Something's really wrong with Nancy Pelosi.
Well, this is one of those very bizarre situations where I feel like the Democrats' legislation were proposals that they want out of the bill are actually, in a weird, bizarre way, more in line with what Trump is actually in favor for. And I think what you're seeing is the Republican leadership doesn't want to co-sign it. They aren't even in line with what Trump wants. Trump had to go circumvent Congress to pass those executive orders for the UI enhancement extension and the stimulus, which the American people still have not received. But Mitch McConnell, which I'm personally
the payroll tax cut,
he has not wanted those things in the bill at all. I can speculate why. Part of me wants to say he doesn't want to be, the leader in charge to add to our budget woes. But $1 trillion is probably not quite enough. But Donald Trump, just by his actions and verbally, to me, has shown that he's willing to go a bit further than what the GOP is going as well. So that's bizarre to me. I think what you're seeing is a battle between Congress, and this is one issue where I feel like Trump, whether it's for his own election or not, he actually sides more for Democrats on this issue.
I wouldn't say all that. But he has to write executive orders for this very reason, for all the antics, the shenanigans.
I just think that it's kind of a no-brainer, though. The reality, if you can't have all these people unemployed, all these businesses shutting down and not release any money into the economy, it's kind of basic economic principle that you have to infuse the economy with some kind of stimulus. It has less to do with welfare and all these things than it has to do with, do you want the economy to crash? We just saw the Feds basically artificially bring the interest rates down to zero, trying to avoid inflation. There's a lot of propping up going on, which makes me very concerned a year or two from now how all this is going to affect us. But we have our Congress, whose really approval rate is like 12%. They aren't really working in favor of the American people. So, I would like to see
Biden. The swamp needs to be drained. They need to drain the swamp. Yeah. That's what they need to do. Some of them people in Congress need to go.
They have to go.
They need to go.
Well,
yeah. I'll agree with that. Progress.
Yeah. But he's a leader.
So we're winding that. Wow, this was a heated debate. Wow, y'all. No, but it was good. Let me check in on some of these comments we got here before we end. Alicia, she says, no, they're realizing their platform is a joke. So now they're pretending like Trump ideas are theirs. It's a joke. We see. Yeah, and here's he says something. Trump's taxes, please. Oh wait, still in court.
Think so.
Yeah.
He ain't gonna release them taxes.
Yes, he will. He will. Congress wastes time going out their way to. Yeah, they do.
Sean says Congress wastes time. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's been a leader.
All right. Well, give everyone your final thoughts. Go ahead, Tasha.
Well, my final thoughts are, I think right now in America, there's a clear cultural war going on / spiritual war. So there's a paradigm shift going on. And for a lot of Black people, especially, and this is not just Black people, since I'm Black, I'm speaking to Black people, we're in a paradigm shift. And so what we have been experiencing over the past 50 years plus is status quo. Trump came in to disrupt status quo. He's disrupted globally. And so it will behoove you as a Black person who is very torn between who you vote for, who you don't vote for, who's racist, who's not racist, is to really sit down and look at the policies. And like Demond said, we're moving into a digital age. So it doesn't matter what president is racist. It doesn't matter. What matters is, are you going to be prepared for America where there's less government involved? There's going to be more freedoms. There's going to be more opportunities for you to renew and reinvent yourself and prepare yourself for a new America. We can't keep doing the civil rights thing. Those days are done. You need to vote your values. If you have Christian values, you can't be voting the Democratic Party. Every liberal policy platform goes against anything in the Bible. So that's first and foremost. If you're a Black Christian, you're supposed to be voting along policy lines that line up with your Christian values. And I can tell you right now, Democratic liberal policies are anti-Christ policies, hands down.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely has
All
been
right. Go ahead. What are your final thoughts?
well, it definitely has been a spiritual debate. I appreciate you bringing me on. I appreciate your enthusiasm, Tasha.
Thank you, Demond.
There. I will agree with President Trump disrupting the status quo. As far as everything else, I think we sort of found the answer toward the end. We have some serious systemic issues with Congress that have been going on for a long time. And though we like to blame a lot of these presidencies, quite frankly, the same thing I saw in the first term of President Trump's term, I saw in the last term of Obama's term, where it's pretty much a standstill. We've been like this for going on 10 years now. And I feel like in order to move beyond this, I need Congress to start keeping it 100 with the American people that we are moving out of the industrial age. We are in a digital age. Everybody right now is on Zoom and all these things right now. I'm talking about, it's going to be a complete overhaul and transformation, even down to how we look at jobs, education, the parents at home, educating their kids, homeschooling. So there's a lot of disruption going on. But I would just like to add to that, the enthusiasm that we have as far as holding these presidential candidates accountable. I always like to plead with everybody watching to keep that same energy for your state elections and your local elections, because the president isn't going to be responsible for everything going on in your community, and he isn't always going to be able to address it from the White House. There are a lot of overarching things that can support that legislation, but keep that same energy. Hold your local elected officials accountable. Make sure you show up to vote when it's time to vote. And I like to separate church and state and just look at the positives. I'm not really a one issue voter, which is why I'm independent, because a lot of things is very nuanced to me personally. But look at both sides. Look at the candidates. See what they're proposing, and see who aligns more with your values as far as policy is concerned, and show up to vote on election day.
Thank you. Good. Thank you. Annalise.
Yeah. Tell everyone how to get in contact with you, how to follow you.
Well, you can follow
Tasha,
me on Instagram, Level Up.
They want to get in touch with you.
Yes, Level Up Goddess on Instagram. I'm a women's empowerment coach and spiritual healer for women who suffer from codependence and who's been in toxic relationships. That's really my focus. If you want information about nursing career or nursing information, I'm a nurse, you can still follow me over on Level Up Goddess. And my Facebook page is Tasha, Tasha. RA is the last name, Ra.
And you can follow as a man that wears many hats. You can follow me as DeMond Childers on Facebook. My name is up there on the screen. If you want to add me as a friend, now that might come with a little bit of discernment if I add you or not. If you want to publicly add me to my artist page, that's Maximum Truth, Maximum_Truth with 3 U's. And you never gonna see somebody who can rap this good, look this good, and debate this good.
All right now.
Check me out there and look out for a lot of projects and things that I have going on from there.
It was
All
a pleasure,
right,
Demond.
listen, thank you all so much for joining me. Nurse Charms Live. Thank you to everybody in the comment
Thank
feed today. You have
you.
been great. A lot of engagement on the, we'll have to circle back and answer some of your comments later. But you all have a good night. Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody. Good
Jermaine.
night.
All right, peace. Thanks for having me on. Have a good one.
You are welcome. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye bye.